page. It's amazing who wanted it or got close to it but didn't get in.
And Stanford and Cal won it bad because UCLA was cheating. They are the most rampantly cheating school in the history of anything that I've ever seen. It's actually a hysterical drama that they caused. They're very lucky that their coach died with a hooker in a hotel room very publicly, because it would have been a massive disaster. They had to fire their chancellor, all sorts of stuff. UCLA, by the way, cheated so rampantly that their chancellor was not allowed to vote in the original Pac-12 until like 10 years after it was founded, because like he was not trusted. They were not trusted as an institution. So in the midst of all that mess, Cal and Stanford tried to join the Ivy League. When they created the Ivy League, it was really a betrayal in a lot of ways of a lot of the schools that they had traditionally played, because it was just this very loose association of the 8 schools. And then they said, boom, we're creating a conference. Boom, we're dropping you all out. Peace out, guys. And it made a huge mess in the East that, again, still reverberates today in a lot of ways. Then when they were being downgraded to what's today FCS, Division I AA, they were scrambling, and they were desperately trying to get people to join who could keep them in Division 1A. And so the reports are actually a little sketchy. What's the newspaper reports? What does a source say? Because these are not. I went to one. They're wonderful, but they will not admit their faults very publicly. So we don't know exactly who they said yes and no to. But in 1978, Army and Navy officially applied to join the Ivy League and were rejected. By 1981, they were pleading with Army and Navy to join them along with Northwestern so they could keep their 1A status, probably with, it looks like, Duke and William and Mary and Holy Cross. And everyone's like, no, you drilled your own holes in the boat, let it sink.
Well, it's interesting to me that you have, especially based on the academic standards that it takes to get into the service academies, that would have been a nice thing for them to have.
Well, I think Army was actually, maybe Navy too. One of them was, I think it was Army, was actually a signatory in the original Ivy Group agreement. And in fact, what the Ivy League did is they used to have all these. They had this thing called the Eastern Conference. It was actually, today it's the ECAC, but it was sort of a combination of all these different sports federations. And what the Ivy League did is they just plucked their own all in together to create it. But the baseball one still had Army and Navy until 1992 is when Army and Navy were finally officially separated from the Ivy League. They were part of the deal the whole time. Here's a laugh of you guys covering Cal and Stanford trying to join. Harvard was Regina George and said no.
Smokey does not get that reference because he's not seen Mean Girls. But
okay,
I don't think I have.
Who supposedly said yes were Penn, Cornell, and Dartmouth. So we threw in JD to be Cornell.
Absolutely, yeah. JD in the corner left. That's good. I love the Dartmouth mascot. That's awesome.
That is literally one of their mascots. And then I thought this was interesting, kind of here. The idea of you don't have to be in a big league. You don't have to have big league sports. It can play a great role, but it absolutely doesn't have to. So these are all AAU members, Ivy League, so two of the Canada U Sports. The UAA schools, Caltech, MIT, 5 campuses of the University of California that don't play FBS football. These are all AAU schools. And one of the interesting things that they've sort of found is that if you can harness sports and make it work and harness a conference to make it work, you can do amazing things. But just like deciding you're going to do it and pumping money into it actually doesn't necessarily guarantee success. And funny enough, if you take the same dollars, I know that Coach Riley will be a wonderful success for us, so I'm not using that as an example. But if you were to take what's USC pumped $200 million into football in the past couple of years, and you pump that into, donor recruitment and marketing and student targeting and all that, you actually could come out ahead more. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. And then, and again, something else to think about for the future. You look at these places. Penn is actually fascinatingly, and we talk about realignment. Penn was trying to go big time. And they were on the very verge of it. And in fact, that was what caused the Ivy League to actually formally be founded, was Penn was making too many waves as a big time football school. And so, for example, when Harvard tried to plant, because Penn had a guy that wanted to be president of the United States was their president, Harold Stassen. And so when they tried to get real snotty at Penn and they canceled a couple games, Penn said, okay, well, you guys are not actually, you're just not good enough, so you're afraid of us. So we're going to place it with Ohio State and Notre Dame. And then the Ivy League schools freaked out and they agreed to some concessions and they got together and they agreed to a round robin schedule. That led to the creation of the Ivy League. Within 3 years, they were doing all the sports together. But, again, there are great stories and interesting elements of, folks that don't necessarily come from the big time conferences. So, there, of course, the commissioner is surrounded by the Kennedys and the Roosevelts. But, you look at little things like, the old school Princeton basketball team where they used to run around the country doing 3-on-3s. It was Craig Robinson, Michelle Obama's brother, and Arnie Duncan. So, some of these schools that are in that list of like, folks that succeed without being in the big time sports, they can make it work. And so, you look at Rice as an example of that. But I think that we sort of see throughout history, if you can harness the conference wave, and get those bids, you can really do amazing things, especially for the folks that are a little bit sort of clinging on the edges. Again, just think about Washington State and Idaho were twins, and they're kind of closer than USC and UCLA, and they, I think, have sort of met some different institutional fates as a result.
It's incredible. Yeah. Tony, some of the questions on the chat room, and I know you got to go, and we're up against the 5 o'clock hour, but from Floyd Samuels, who told Tulane to leave the SEC?
So, Floyd, there's actually some great articles on that. Tulane and Georgia Tech both got kind of cocky and thought that they could run national schedules and sort of be like Notre Dame. Again, if you guys, anybody who's in your chat right now should get the book. You can just get it off on your Kindle called What If, that has some really cool questions like this. That looks at I think they have one if Georgia Tech had stayed in the SEC, because one of the other things that's interesting is when you look at the Big Ten, Michigan got kicked out of the Big Ten at one point for cheating real bad in 1912 or 1910 or anyway. It was when they added Ohio State, and there's some question of. Notre Dame was, of course, desperately trying to get into a conference at the same time. And when they looked at that, Notre Dame probably could have been in the Big Ten. And you think about, these schools, there's schools that really have some factors that they can make work culturally that allowed them to succeed as independents. Other people couldn't do it. Notre Dame, because they're the Catholic school, they're the icon of all of that. They really make it work. USC and UCLA have this crazy spirit together that's sort of intertwined that allowed them to thrive in a lot of ways, both academically and as athletic schools, even after they were sort of their down period of the cheating of the 50s. And by the way, the cheating of the 50s is now all completely legal. And actually, what was the huge scandal that created the whole Pac-12 in the fiery mess. Actually, just today was what we would just call athletic scholarships. They just weren't allowed at the time.
Tony, as always, and also I want to share this from Gary on the chat room as well. Best guest of the past calendar year with Flames. Back the pack. # West Coast. Thanks for your time,
tell
man.
him fight on.
Hey, thank you, Tony. Let's stay in touch, and you're on the chat room. You're on the text line with us all the time, feeding us information. We appreciate you as always. That's a lot of work, and we damn sure do appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
That's great stuff. Archer Quick, UCLA, some things never change. Also, it's just cool. And the graphics of adding, depending on what the top